you. My name is Glenn Adamson. I'm the co-host of Design in Dialogue. Welcome to the program. Today we have the great honor of welcoming Dorte Mandrup to the program, coming in from Copenhagen. And Dorte, you are 101st guest of this year. We're starting in a new century here at the program. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Glenn.
Just a few housekeeping announcements before we begin. First of all, be aware that we are muting everyone just to maintain audio quality. If you do want to ask a question or make a comment, and I hope you will, just put that in the chat box. You could also just let us know where you are zooming in from. We always like to know that. And as always, we will have this interview archived on Freeman Benda's website after the fact, so you can watch again or let others know about it. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Dorte, we have so many images to look at, but first I wanted to ask you basically how things are with you right now in Copenhagen. And I know we're viewing you in your office, but do you have your whole team around you? What's the situation for you?
Well, the situation in Copenhagen is really quite good for the moment. The bars and cafes and restaurants are opening up today with a COVID passport or with a test. You're actually able, for the first time in 4 months, to go to the restaurants, and I think everybody is very happy about that. Spring is coming, and so it's quite a positive atmosphere. We've been working in the office all through COVID with half the people here, kind of changing on a schedule, and I think it worked really well. We've been happy not to have anybody. Yeah, we had one who was infected. Otherwise, we've been doing really well.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear it's been
Thank you.
Mainly a safe experience for all of you. And I know obviously an incredibly turbulent and volatile one. Can I ask you one general question just about your thoughts about the future of architecture coming out of the pandemic? Are you of the opinion that it is going to create a major interruption in the way the profession works, or even the kinds of buildings that it makes? Or is it, in your view, more of a temporary, we'll be back to normal within a year or two?
I think that's a real difficult question to answer. I think everybody right now is kind of waiting for what's going to happen with architecture and the cities. I think there is going to be more interest in public space, and I can see the discussions around. I mean, in Germany, in Switzerland, here is very much about making public space available and to make more green spots and so forth. But on the other hand, you could say there's been so many epidemics through the history of Europe, at least, and it hasn't changed the cities all that much. So also people are discussing very much about how workspace will change. Will we start working from home? And maybe I think there's a change of mind in a way that people maybe temporarily, but are getting a little more, a little different values, I guess, moving out of the cities, maybe a little bit more. But I don't think that. I think it's a real importance that you actually have a workspace that you can work together with people and you're not at a distance. So that's my personal opinion, and I think people here, especially in the office, has been fighting to get in here to work and to be interchanging ideas and stuff. I think that's so difficult to do on a screen. But yeah, I'm not a fortune teller. So,
well, I suppose one reason I wanted to ask you this question in particular is that you often work in sites that I would describe as charged, historically charged, psychologically charged with the forces of nature. It's very rare that you go into a project without responding to a set of conditions that are quite specific and often quite intense.
Yes.
I guess I was also just interested in your view of the general situation for architecture, because in a funny way, it seems like public space in general has become psychologically charged. And again, that may go away, may wane quickly, but it does seem to me like it's a time for architects to maybe help people reoccupy public space in a way that feels safe, feels positive, and so on.
I think that's an interesting point of view. I think there could be some kind of reconciliation work to do, for architects to do with public space. I was in the airport the other day. I was going from Zurich to Copenhagen, and there was this American, I think he was a businessman, and he was very nervous about, we were sitting 10 meters apart, and I was drinking my wine, and he got very mad at me, telling me I was one of the reasons, that this pandemic went on. And I was, I really tried to reason with him that, we were so far apart and I could drink my wine and he would be okay. And I think this kind of almost like hostility that you could feel towards people in public space, I think is something that really has to be worked with. And I'm not sure that architecture can reconcile, but I think that's part of the work.
Yeah, I suppose the hostility comes from anxiety too.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So reconciliation is a really
great
word to think about there. Well, maybe we could return to these questions perhaps at the end if we have time, but maybe we should look at some projects, because I know we have a lot of beautiful visuals to look at. So if you don't mind, go ahead and sharing your screen, we can get going on that.
Sure. Yes. This is just the first picture, Glenn, and I think that when we talked last time, you said, well, you're doing such a widespread of work, very different sites and different contexts. And I think one of the things that's so important is, to me, is that we work with the notion of context, one way or the other. Always, as you said, there's also somehow the context is charged. It can be physical or emotionally. So what we always try to do is to enhance or to extract what's there or what's underlining the contextual situations, to, in a way, to underline what's already embedded there, I think, and by doing that, creating a place, also emotionally, as well as physical, of course. So the context can be very different. It can be historical, it can be a landscape situation, but we always try to work with the contextual conditions before anything else. And I guess, so is this working? Den virker ikke, den her. Tænd og sluk. Okay, sorry. Okay, I hope it's working now. It's still not working. Kan du køre den frem, Christopher? So then the next picture is what we talked about, the kind of very different projects that we've been doing. This is mainly in Scandinavia, but the first picture up there is our first project within Copenhagen, and it's a neighborhood center, sort of on a very low budget, and a lot of our projects in the beginning has been very low budget. So it's been trying to get the most out of what was there. But also in a way to charge the buildings. The other one is a kindergarten, which is actually on a beach. So it's all about it's both about the physical context, but also about creating this space for children. And there's the IKEA headquarter in Malmö, which is very much about creating an efficient workspace, but also to work with sustainability in a quite advanced way, and with new ways of working, and activity-based workspace. And then the last one here is a view tower on the harbor of Aarhus, which is mainly kind of a fun thing, but it's also about getting the most out of a view tower. The brief was to make a view tower where you had an elevator getting up and being able to view everything on a platform and going down again. So we created this to in a way celebrate the movement, and to create a sculpture that you could inhabit and use in different ways.
Yeah, it's a very sculptural object, and in that way very different from certainly the IKEA Center, which again, as you said, has this kind of expression of systems thinking and the reality of their business and identity.
Yes.
I think probably viewers will be astonished to hear that first project on the upper left was relatively affordable, because it certainly doesn't look like that. It looks like, you know, a kind of extravagant modernism has been achieved somehow there.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can, I know this is a difficult question, but can you characterize the strategies that you use to kind of squeeze every bit of possibility out of a budget and, you know, get the architecture to be as great as it can be?
Well, I guess we do prioritize a lot, and I think that the knowledge of the budget and the spreadsheets is part of our background in a way, because to be able to control this process, you need to really also be in control of the budget. So with this first project, we worked a lot on the spreadsheet and to in a way prioritize everything to be able to create sort of these the small building like this, but also to prioritize the public space within the building as much as possible. So some of the offices inside are really are not extravagant, I have to tell you. But also using quite sort of unprecious materiality. The whole construction is of the box on top is a timber construction, of the cheapest construction timber you could get. So in a way, I think a lot of our projects has also been about working with unprecious materials and try to get some kind of aesthetics out of them. So the IKEA project is also a low budget project. Of course, all the kindergartens we've been doing are low budget. So the view tower is not, but we've been working quite a lot on budgets. And I think that also the knowledge of the technology, I think is so important. It's so important to be on top of the process, so you are actually able to make these priorities, to know how to connect and you know, on site, and I think that's a part of what we really think is important to do. So we have some great people in the office that are actually extremely knowledgeable on buildability, you could say, because otherwise, you know, you end up in a dead end.
Yeah, it's just a great reminder that architecture, although we might experience it as an aesthetic discipline, has all logistical and economic aspects. And I suppose if you're working for IKEA, you can't. Nothing would be less on brand for IKEA than to do something that's wildly indifferent to price. Right?
No, no, I think the IKEA, the way we work with IKEA, which was actually a really exciting process, but they said, you know, with a smile, you know, we would always ask you to do it 10% cheaper. So no matter what you do, but I do think that you know, even in doing that, there's priorities in this project. It was the most sustainable office project in Northern Europe, and they kind of required you know, smart thinking. So every time you do something, you need to work it through. And we spent, you know, much more time on this project than you would usually do in the planning process and the design process. And they don't mind going back, you know. So making sure that everything is thought through before we started the buildings, and that was quite interesting. I think it was very valuable.
Okay, well, maybe we should proceed to the case study in more detail.
Yes. Then you know, of course, we've been working around Europe, but also we've been working or trying to work in North America. So the latest projects we've been doing here is two competitions. This one is in Arkansas, in Fayetteville, Anthony Timberland's center that we unfortunately didn't win. And we've been also working in LA with La Brea Tar Pit project in collaboration with Arab and Martha Schwartz. so we in a way we're trying to expand our work around Europe and North America.
And what's the status of the La Brea project, Dorte?
I don't actually know how the process is going, but since we didn't win, we kind of left that the news about it. But I think they are in a process of doing the master plan for the whole park, and it's a really important community area as well. For LA does not have that many green spots, so it's a real important public space. And I think the planning of the park and the area is the first part of the planning.
Okay. Well, I feel sad for Los Angeles and America that we're not getting this building. It's absolutely spectacular.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you. Yeah. But then, I have 4 projects today that I would like to present, and I think it would be great if you ask questions after each project, so we can, discuss. And each of the projects are in a way relating to context in a very different way, but also explaining how we think about the notion of context and how it influences the formal work of the building. So the first one is the Exile Museum in Berlin that we just won a while ago, and are starting to do the design work now. And in a way, this is a very historically charged site. It was the site is on the Anhalter Bahnhof in Berlin, and it was the largest train station in Europe at the time, directly connected to all the major cities in Northern Europe, and it had more passengers coming through than any other station in Europe. So really a huge station, and also in a way it represented the life of Berlin at the time in the 20s. It was a really liberal city, and people was coming from all over the world to be part of this intellectual and creative center that Berlin also was before everything went wrong. And during the Nazi regime, the station was also the backdrop of Hitler's propaganda displays and the stage of some of the most tragic events, with the trains going to the concentration camps and really inconceivable events. And then in 1945 it was bombed, but it was partly in use until the wall divided Berlin, and then became meaningless because the tracks was going through East Berlin, and the Anhalter Bahnhof was in West Berlin. So then they actually blasted the building, and in the late 60s, and only leaving this enormous pile of bricks on the site. And the only thing that was left is this small entrance building. It's actually not small, but compared to what was there, it's really just a fragment. And a lot of things happened to the site. So the site that was actually, the trace of the Anhalter Bahnhof has been divided into different functions. So in a way, this fragment is also bearing witness as the only left, it's the only remains that is bearing witness to everything that Berlin has been through since the 20s. So we wanted to pay respect to this small fragment. So by placing the site of the Exile Museum was not the full site; it was kind of only a fragment again of the former site. But in a way, paying respect to this fragment by making a backdrop to it, and by doing that, representing history as this void in between the backdrop and the fragment. So you have the space in between in a way as the most important space here. So it's of course both an informal plaza, entrance plaza, but it's also a place for reflection between the new building and the fragment of the building here. So the building is constructed as a large vault. So it's in direct connection, of course, with the exterior, but it's also resembling, you could say, kind of all places of transit, the train stations, the airport, the terminal, and of course also the place of the many people going into exile from exactly this place from 1933, when Hitler was taking power. So working with this history, you know, it's quite a balance, because you do not want to recreate, or you cannot recreate history, of course, but you want to have this remembrance, and so we created the floor of the building as a small hill that you have to walk. So you have to walk upwards in a way resembling the way that you moved in the former Anhalter Bahnhof, moving in and up the stairs and up to the tracks where you would be leaving your place and your home. So walking up the staircases, walking into the exhibition is part of the old movement that you had at the train station. And then moving through the building is in a way all the exhibition is in this sort of inner box in the big vault, and when you move from the exhibitions, you will have these kind of frame views towards the not all that many historic remains, but there are a few, and you have the possibility of here in a way having these frame views of the former bunker and different buildings that are still remaining on site. So the balconies are kind of view balconies, and then the facade is somehow representing the many that went into exile, but also it's kind of filtering between the inside and the outside. So the brick facade is, of course, relating to the former Anhalter Bahnhof Materiality, but it's also, of course, constructed in a new way. It's much more transparent, and it has this visibility that's somehow also symbolic, you could say. So, Glenn, if you want to ask some questions about this project, feel free.
Yeah, a lot of questions occur to me, but maybe I'll just ask a couple. One is about this idea of witnessing. It struck me in the image you showed a moment ago of that amazing tree standing in front of the fragment of the building, fragment of the old rail station.
Here?
Well, view back, there's a better picture of the tree, but there it is. Yeah.
Okay.
But
yeah.
It struck me that the tree itself was also a witness, probably, that the tree had been there.
Maybe not, because if you see pictures of the site after the bombing, there was absolutely or almost no remains left. And I think what happened in Berlin was that even the Tiergarten, they planted an enormous amount of trees coming from all over Germany to kind of reestablish the Tiergarten. Yeah. So I don't think it's actually from that time, but it's large.
Yeah.
Okay.
The main gesture of witnessing is that fragment, and it's this very bold and deferential gesture that you've made to have the entire building giving way to that presence. And I would love to hear you talk more about the idea of a piece of architecture as a witness, because of course we think of a witness as a person that can bear testimony, almost as if in a court. And given the crimes that were perpetrated here, that it makes me think of that kind of a concept as well. So I would love to hear you talk more about this idea of witnessing and what that fragment is actually doing for the public.
Yeah, I think that to me, the historic buildings, depending on how they've been treated, they have this possibility of being kind of silent witnesses to history going on And of course, this is so brutal and everything that's been going on in Berlin, and that this building has been bearing witness to is really is really okay, sorry, that was just my screen. Let's keep closing down. Du skulle have skrevet cancel. Yeah, are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so we've been working also with this historic building of Paul Schulze-Naumburg, which is on one hand a listed building, and on the other hand, it was a place where it was a Nazi think tank, you could say. And I think it's extremely interesting to try to understand the building in relationship to the function and to the people that are actually using the building, and how you can change that, how the building is charged emotionally by changing the function, but also in a way by understanding the building as in a way as an innocent shell, and that you can actually change the emotions around a building by changing the functions. So I think that's it's something that I really enjoy working with historic buildings, especially if the buildings are not too well restored or renovated, because there's traces there that is in a way not, of course the buildings are not evil or good, but they are kind of representing the shell of something, and you can change that shell, you can change that the way you feel about it.
That's a very powerful idea, that the materiality of the buildings is itself neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we occupy it, and even the way that we remember events that has happened there that should bear the ethical charge, is a more empowering way of entering a site like that. Or you mentioned the Design Academy in Salek, which is this, the residence of this horrific racist Nazi that now is trying to reimagine itself as a progressive design academy.
Yes.
I
think it's a very powerful idea, actually, to overcome what was there, and in a way it makes you, it's almost like by changing the Paul Schulze-Naumburg's home into this progressive design academy, it's a very sort of positive way of not overcoming history, because of course you're not overcoming history, but you're in a way pointing towards a new positive future, and by doing that you are somehow overcoming what was.
Yeah, just one last comment on this project is just that the beautiful curve, that boat-like curve. It also just occurred to me that the new building is something like a plinth for the old building, and it replicates the procedures of museum making in grand scale, because of course we take objects that are of great importance, relics often like this, and place them on a platform, and it's like the whole building is a platform for that fragment, which I think is a fascinating, just as a curator, it's a fascinating gesture. I've never seen a museum do that before, sort of replicate the logic of museums in general in its form. I really admire that.
I think the idea is to, in a way, make which is also part of what we usually work a lot with, is how to make the space a public space that is an inviting and in a way integrating the buildings into the urban texture. So by, in a way, lifting up the museum and creating this vault, this kind of open space underneath, you also make the space more democratic, you could say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Let's maybe go on to the next.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, I have a problem here. Okay. Let's see if it works. Still not working.
Whereas you may need to paint an image with your words.
Okay, so another project which is entirely different and has different issues, you could say, or different, it's charged in a different way, is this place 300 kilometers north of the Arctic in Norway. It's a small island right on the edge of the ocean, and it's kind of facing the Atlantic coast. It's not an archipelago. It's really you know, on the edge of the large sea. And the reason why we are there at all is that this small island on the edge of the sea is actually also facing this enormous landscape, the ocean landscape, or the ocean bottom, which is you know, the ocean is a landscape like everything we see on top. It's only the water that's dividing the two landscapes. And what happens here is that you have these valleys that are extremely deep, that go all the way into the island almost, and making it possible for the large whales to pass by very close to the shore. And this means that you actually have the toothed whales and all different kinds of whales coming very close to the shore, also making it possible to go on whale safari and to watch and also to understand the life of the whales. So so this is part of the conceptual idea of the whale, is to understand the way that the landscape and the ocean bottom is one. And of course, here you see the toothed whales. They go diving 1,500 meters down to the bottom of the valley to get food, to get the big octopuses that they live from. So this place is a really popular place for scientists, but also, of course, for tourists to see whales. And there's a local initiative here to make this building, to try to understand the importance of the whales, but also the life of whales from different points of views, from the arts and cultural perspective, but of course also from the scientific perspective. And so this was a competition, and the competition site was quite small. It was on a peninsula on the small island facing the ocean. But the island was also quite small, so the whole brief and the area was almost covering the island. So so the idea could be either to build a kind of a compact building on the island to be able to have a you know, fair fight, you could say, between building and landscape, or the other idea was to, in a way, make the landscape into the building. So the poetic fact that the landscape above and under the waters is the same. It's one continuous skin, you know, only divided by the water, inspired us to kind of think of the building as a thin crust of the earth, or of the landscape that we sort of incised with a knife underneath and lifted up part of the surface. So by doing that, we created this cavity underneath, and also we recreated the island as a public space. So a kind of a win-win situation. And so conceptually, you know, there's this incision of lifting up the crust of the earth, and just letting it rest on 3 points. So you have this big span underneath, and then working with the surface of the island as part of the flooring surface. So you have this kind of natural movement on the surface of the building, and which also makes it possible to have a continuous relationship between the floor of the building and the landscape on the outside. So we didn't have this plinth that we talked about before, but the island itself is the floor and the plinth of the building. And so and then the interior, in a way, is conceived as being we have the backspaces on the towards the small village, but also by creating these cavities in a way, there's a kind of a natural resemblance. So all the exhibition spaces are placed within these cavities or cave-like structures, but they're all in a way in contact or facing the sea. And by doing that, we could have the cafe and restaurant and so forth also as being part of the landscape facing the sea, and then all the exhibition spaces, and especially the largest exhibition spaces, in direct contact with where the whales are living. And then what we did was to create kind of different platforms on the interior to be able to negotiate between the existing landscape and the flooring, and then creating this closeness to the water in a way, but also working with the rock of the building on the interior of the building. And the facade, this is really a harsh climate, as you can imagine, and the wind is really harsh. So the facade is also a structural facade. So with the curved facade, you have a greater wind load. It's withstanding the wind load much better, and then also it's distorting the view between the interior and the exterior in a kind of surreal way, sort of exaggerating the closeness to the sea. And the interior exhibition is placed on these interior cave-like spaces, and they have kind of different. They're both objects and also, of course, media inside of this building. But when you have this curvature of the walls and the ceiling, you have much better possibility of working with media, because you don't have a precision in the space, or you have the possibility of actually creating really spaces that surround you with the media. And some of the exhibition spaces are of course dark and furnished with very advanced media, so you can create a different reality, and others are very open towards the sea. So it's kind of it's not creating boundaries, and I think that's one of the important thing about when you have these museums or exhibitions that has any kind of relationship to the immediate surrounding. It's always a dilemma how to make exhibitions that usually needs dark spaces and at the same time have this contact. So I think we kind of achieve that by having both. So when you're this close to the ocean, you have the saline climate, lots of salt, of course, in the air, but also the water is sometimes kind of flushing almost on the walls of the building. It's extremely important to make a choice of materials that's sturdy enough to withstand this. And so we have been working for many years with sustainability and of course sustainable materials. And a lot of the times timber will be the choice that we do, but in this case the only sort of sustainable choice is to work with the existing rock as a cladding where we can, but of course it's a concrete structure that is actually creating the space here. Then again, we've been working with the making the building as publicly accessible as possible, and by making the roof accessible, you have in a way created a new place, a new public place, which is right on the edge of the ocean. So you can have gatherings here, and you don't have to, don't have to enter the building and pay your entrance here. You can also just use the building as a plaza to view. Of course, here the midnight sun is here, but also in the winter time the northern lights, and of course the view of the ocean, which is always different and always amazing. So if you would like to comment on this, Glenn, you're very welcome.
Well, boy, how could I not? I mean, it's the most ravishing project, and the image of the whale tail meeting landscape and both being completely consummated in this one elegant gesture of a building is absolutely extraordinary. And then also, as you just said, this idea of presenting a building that's also a public space, which reminds me a little bit of the Oslo Opera House that Snowhead created as well, but it's such a different expression here. It's still a very beautiful generosity there. I just had a couple of questions, maybe a little bit more about the storyline for you. Can you just say a little bit more about who the client was for this extraordinary project?
Yeah, the initiative is local, and it's a group of local people, partly the tourist board and partly biologists that are doing research, and partly people that are doing whale safari from the harbor here, and it's kind of a Connemara project, I think, for this group of people, and they managed to actually get state foundation and a lot of private foundations to work with them. So they are the budget is, as you know, you can understand, because it's very ambitious project. It's quite a high budget, and they actually managed to collect almost all the funding for this building. So it's quite extraordinary. I think it's really it's also a quite extraordinary group of people in this quite small town of Andøya, which is 4,500 people.
And just one last question, in terms of dealing with the interiors, I was fascinated by that bespoke strategy of incorporating the existing rock into the topology of the floor plan. Were you also involved in designing the exhibitions that are presented, or did you have a collaborator in that respect?
No, the exhibitions are right now being planned from a group of exhibition. There's a group of a steering committee with a group of designers that are right now sort of planning the storyline of the exhibition. And what you saw here was kind of the first ideas for this storyline that was integrated into our building. So usually we don't do the exhibition design, but we work very closely with the exhibition designers, because it's really a very important collaboration, and we've had some really great collaborators that in a way understands that the building and the exhibition has to kind of come together.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the major creative partnerships in the museum world that's not very visible to the public. So it's great to mention that. So
it's extremely important, and I think exhibition design is really it's a different field. And I think if architects just, insist on doing the exhibition design within the spaces, there's a lot of knowledge that you won't get.
Okay, great. Well, let's carry on to the third project.
So this is again a different. It's a landscape project, but it's very different. It's in Denmark. It's the Wadden Sea. That is kind of a really shallow sea bottom that stretches out to the sea. And this is a UNESCO protected area because it has it's a very rich and fertile ground because of the tide that changes, and every time it dries out, it leaves a lot of food for the birds and for the seals and for so it's an extremely important coast for all of the migrating birds going from the north to the south every year and back again, of course. So there's about 10 to 12 million migrating birds coming here every year, every spring and every fall. And they will feed here for 6 weeks and prepare their long journey to the African coast or back to the tundra in the north. So for the sole ecological reality, it's an important place. Of course, it's also a place of beauty. Then it's a place that's out on the outskirts of Denmark, and as in all other countries in the world, people are leaving the outskirts, moving towards the cities. So it's part of a strategy also to create a tourist attraction to this place. People come here anyhow, but then having an exhibition center that actually tells about the lives of the birds, but also makes tourists come here and spend some of their money and their time. So the idea with this center, there was an existing exhibition center on the site, which looked like this. And the idea was to enlarge that building to create this attraction. And they actually thought they could have around 40,000 people a year, which was kind of 4 times as many as they had until now. But it ended up becoming a sort of an architecture attraction. So now there are 110,000 people a year. So which is great. I think it's great for architecture that you could actually create that, and it's it's understandable to anybody. But the idea was to keep the existing building for sustainability reasons, but also economic reasons. So by reusing the existing building, we could both get more economy into the new building, but also we could have a quite sustainable start out with our project. So the existing building is from the 90s, 1990, and is kind of trying to resemble the typology of a kind of traditional Danish farmhouse. So the area is also historically old Viking grounds. So the area has since the 800 been an important trading site. So the Vikings would come down along the coast and trade in the nearby town of Ribe. And they would also farm in the area around. So what you see behind here is a reconstruction of a Viking longhouse, which uses clay and timber, and then the thatched roof, which is kind of a very traditional topology of Danish farmhouses. It was cheap and nearby material. So this is the material. It's the reeds that you can harvest very close by, a few kilometers away. And of course, extremely sustainable because there's no transportation and it's all natural. And again, by reusing and transforming the existing structure, we could reduce the carbon print, and by working thoroughly with the new structure, we could actually achieve an energy use that was equivalent to a passive house, but also the footprint of the materiality of the building was very, very low. So working with the existing building, since it was kind of, if you want to reuse all installations and toilets, kitchen, whatever, you in a way it's very decisive to the circulation of the building. At the same time, we're not all that interested in the existing building as a visual aesthetic. So what we did was to work around the building to embrace it, and to in that sense almost embrace and hide the existing building with a new larger building that could also use the existing building. So entering into the gable of the existing building was something that we needed to do to be able to get the circulation right. So as the Vikings and also many traditional farmhouses uses the thatched roof, we tried to kind of take that a little bit further by using the thatched material for both the roof and the facades and overhang, and by doing that we could in a way make an abstraction of the building and make it relate very much to the existing landscape. And then of course there's also this sculptural and tactile possibility with the reeds. It's handmade, and it's actually the technique you use is as in the old times, you will use a board and you will actually hit it into place. It's almost like working with a piece of clay. And then the climate around here in the Wadden Sea, you have these large open surfaces and an enormous amount of wind, because there's nothing to hinder the speed of the wind. but also there's a lot of salt in the air, which is an advantage when you use the reed, because it preserves the reed, and the salt is also hindering the fungus and stuff that can actually deteriorate this material. So placing a house that's thatched is really great when you have an open surface and you have it's close to the sea. So working with the formal language of the building is very much about, of course, creating shelter from the wind by having these diagonal lines, so the wind will move over the building, and creating this inner courtyard where you actually protect it, but also to work with the sculptural quality to underline, the entrance, or if there's a roof light, or other features here you could use with the sculptural quality here. So having an entrance in the corner of a building is not the greatest thing for a public building. So it needed to have this so exaggerated cut into the facade to underline where the entrance was. And then, of course, the horizontal lines and the sculptural treatment of the building also works in a way with how the building merges with the existing surface of the landscape. And of course, creating shelter by making these incisions. So it's raining a lot. In Denmark, it's also very windy. Then we took the existing building and clad it because the proportions of the building was so strange in a way, but also the materiality was really not relating to the colors of the landscape or to the place. So we've been recladding the existing building with Robinia, which is a European hardwood, which is you don't have to treat it with any kind of treatment. And it becomes gray, and in a way also merges with the thatched material later on. But you can still see what is the existing and what is the new building. And then you totally taking away the tactility of the outside of the building to respect the exhibition and to make it as abstract as possible in a way, because making an exhibition building, to me, it's extremely important that you understand the importance of having neutral, or at least maybe not neutral, but having spaces where you don't have to fight the space for the spaces has to have an abstraction to make the what happens in the exhibition the most important thing. Yes, and that is my last picture from the Warden season.
Just I know we're about to run out of time, but just one question about this project, which again, I think for those who didn't know the project already, looking at the site and wondering what you would come up with, and then seeing what you did come up with, it is really the most magical experience to follow your thought process. But it struck me that there's a kind of funny thing here about national identity that I wanted to ask you about, because here you are actually working now in Denmark. You're not in Berlin, you're actually in the country, and also working at a site that had already had this architectural statement rather self-consciously and awkwardly of a kind of localism or regional style. And in you come and use this materiality that is also local or regional, that does refer back to Viking heritage, what could be a clearer statement of Danish culture. And yet it seems to me that you also managed to escape any kind of simple-minded nationalistic or even blunt and symbolic register. It reminds me of this term critical regionalism that Anton used to talk about. And I would just love to hear you talk about this as a Danish building or not, and how you think about that question of identity.
Well, I was once saying, we did a lecture here in Denmark, and I said, I don't care whether it's reeds or straw, for drinks that we used here, because it's not about bringing back, it's not about bringing back Danish tradition for sure here. It's, to me, it's a much more abstract and kind of distant way of relating to the place, or it's a much more abstract way of relating to the place. I think the regionality or the traditionalist architecture that are kind of referring to also to building methods that you're not using anymore is kind of becomes very easily kitschy, and I think it's extremely important that you have the. I'm not sentimental, when I work with when we work with a place, I think it's very important not to be sentimental, but to in a way embrace the place with everything, and not with and this kind of nationalist redoing or re-establishing something that was, is in a way, to me, extremely sentimental.
Yeah. So it's not revivalism.
No, for sure not. No.
Yeah. Okay, that's fascinating. I mean, that's a whole. We need a whole other conversation to talk about that.
Yes.
But let's turn to the last.
Yes.
Last project, is a great finale for us too.
Yes, thank you. The next project is in Greenland, and I'm so happy to say that we're actually opening this building this summer, and it's been a long journey because it's really difficult to build here in Greenland in this climate. And Greenland is about a quarter of the size of the United States. It only has 56,000 inhabitants. So as you can imagine, this is I think it's one of the only places on Earth that's still real nature. And man is in a way not important in this vast country or this vast landscape. So also with having a density this low for the population, it's probably one of the places in the world where the population has the least impact of the climate changes. But then on the other hand, it's also the most visible place. This is where you can actually see climate change happen if you're not turning your back. So the Ilulissat Icefjord is a phenomenon, a natural phenomenon, where you have an ice fjord going all the way to the glacier, to the permanent ice, to the ice cap. And what happens here naturally is that every year the glacier will calve icebergs, and they will sail out towards the sea, towards the Disco Bay. But because of a ridge in the bottom of the fjord, they will kind of pack, and so before they go into the sea, they will kind of calve once again. So this is a natural phenomenon. But what you can see here is that for the last 20 years, the speed of the glacier edge has moved, and the movement into the ice cap has speeded up radically for the last 20 years, exponentially. So this is also the place where people scientists will study the ice, but also where kind of governments will come to actually with their own eyes see how climate change affects the melting of the ice cap. So the purpose of the Icefjord Centre here is to communicate the importance of the ice, to communicate climate change, and to do that, the center is actually placed on the edge of the UNESCO heritage site, which is the ice fjord here. And as you can see, this is a drone photo taken I think a month ago, and what you see on your on my left side is the little town of Ilulissat with 4,500 people, the second largest town in Greenland, and the Icefjord Centre is kind of in the middle of the picture, on the edge of a ridge, you could almost say. So the climate here is truly extreme. When we saw the site in Norway, you have the 300 kilometers north of the Arctic doesn't mean the same kind of extreme climate as here, because you have the Gulf Stream going along the Norwegian coast. But here there's no Gulf Stream going along any coast, and so the climate is extremely harsh. It has between 2 to 18 degrees Fahrenheit in average, except for in the very short summers, which is only like a short window of June, July, and some of August, and then the snow falls again. So the distances are enormous, and there's in a way no possibility of measuring human scale because there are no trees, and it's an absolutely breathtaking place, but it's also hostile. If you walk in the wrong direction, you will you can risk to die. So it's of course the so there's something about the relationship, I think, between building and landscape here, which is also about making the landscape accessible and to make it humane, to make a protection for human beings in this landscape. It's also a very vulnerable landscape. The few mosses and the plants that are growing here are extremely vulnerable. So what you want to do when you build here is to not touch the existing landscape very much, or as little as possible. When we came to the competition site the first time, this is a summer situation, and we were a little disappointed because we couldn't see the ice fjord from the site. Not until you came to the very edge of the site, and from here you could actually see the ice fjord in the horizon, where you see the icebergs. This is all moving icebergs that go, within a year they will move from the glacier to the Disco Bay. So we decided to cantilever the building over the edge of the site to be able to create a dynamic movement through the exhibition, and by doing that, creating kind of a dramatic revealing of the ice fjord as you move through the exhibition. And as the Greenlandic bedrock is also considered the oldest, geologically oldest bedrock on Earth, this is where geologists will go to kind of understand how old Earth is. There's one Monique Rosing who several years ago actually established a new understanding of how old the Earth is by studying Greenlandic bedrock. Anyway, in this billion-year context of time, we really wanted to underline how few the human seconds on Earth really are, or our few seconds of fame here, by creating a very visually light building, almost resembling a skeleton of an animal, that could sort of be slowly returning to nature. So this is kind of the formal idea here. So in the Arctic, there's no locally sourced material. There's no timber. There's no steel. There's no concrete. So there's no production of building materials at all. So what this means that everything that is being built in Greenland has to be shipped, or the materials has to be shipped to Greenland, which is of course seen in a sustainability way. It's we had to be really thorough to create a project that has as little materiality as possible to be shipped, or as little weight or as little volume as possible. So also we needed to make a building that could be partly created in Denmark and shipped in pieces into this place, because the 2-month window of the summertime means that this is the only time you can get in with ships with material, and also it's the window where you can build on the outside, because otherwise it becomes too cold and difficult. So that's why we planned in the first in the beginning, we planned to have a full timber construction that was consisted of these frames that you could ship in pieces into small containers and and built, you know, on site here. Then later on, when we understood the climate change has changed the climate here also, to make it much more moist, and also to make the bridge between you know, above the freezing point and underneath the freezing point, made timber not as durable as we originally thought it would be. So we've been changing the structure to a composite of of timber and steel. The winds are very harsh, but fortunately they have the main direction is kind of stable. But when you have wind and you have snow, the big challenge is how to avoid a snow buildup, because they can have builds up that are like, you know, several meters high, and will prevent the whole building from surviving. So part of the boomerang shape or is also to create not shelter from the wind, but actually to create turbulence, so you keep the building clean from the snow. And also, of course, lifting up when you have this wing that's shaped as a boomerang. Also, we created an aerodynamic facade that kept the facade almost clean from snow. And then, of course, lifting it up, not touching the existing landscape too much, but also to allow for the snow melt water to come away from the side. And then the idea is quite simple. We have these timber frames. They're basically pre-produced in pieces, and then what we do is that we have the timber frames geometry is changing through the building from a pure triangle facing west to a pure triangle facing east, through a four-sided shape rectangle. And by doing that, we create a movement over the roof that allows entrance on one side and exit on the other side. And then we also allow two covered spaces in each end that are facing west and east, which makes it possible for always to find shelter from the wind. And also it's kind of a generous gesture to the people in the area, trekking or whatever, that you can find shelter here, and you don't have to enter, you don't have to pay entrance to the center. So again, part of designing these buildings are very much about also creating a public space that makes it anchor also with the local community, and when you actually entering into this pristine area, you need to somehow give something back that is not you know, controlled by ticket booth and so forth. So by creating this movement on the roof, we also created a gateway between, in a way, the town or civilization and the wilderness or the UNESCO heritage site. So when you move up on to the top of the building, you will see the ice fjord for the first time, and then you can kind of enter into the park. So being 250 kilometers north of the Arctic, of course, you have midnight sun and you have northern light and all these beautiful phenomena. And also you don't have sun for 6 weeks during from the end of November to the 12th of January, where the sun will come up for the first time. But the landscape is kind of lit by the moon, so it's quite bright anyhow, even though you don't see the sun. And you have these possibility both for tourists and scientists to also work in these quite dark nights, which is not as dark. But when the sun comes back, the local community usually goes out to this place anyhow to celebrate. It's the 12th of January, it's at 12 o'clock, and they will come out here all together, and they will see the sun come up for 40 minutes, and then it comes down again. And so we hope you know, that this will be a place of celebration also for these kind of events. Yeah. And then this is the last picture. This is a real iPhone picture, again taken I think 3 weeks ago, with the Northern Light. It's almost too much.
Yeah.
So we almost finished, and looking forward to open this exhibition. Also, the exhibition is going to be really exciting with ice cores exhibited, I think for the first time for a long time, because they have certain conditions that it's quite difficult to keep them frozen and visible at the same time. But I think it's going to be exciting also to see the exhibition.
I'll say, well, this has been an incredible tour through the body of work, but finishing with this project is just, I mean, it is so breathtaking and moving. And I think I'll just confine myself to a comment rather than ask a question, which is just to say that you spoke very beautifully about the lack of human scale at this site and the awe of sublime nature that one must have, and also the sort of, in a way, fear and respect that one must have of this landscape that doesn't need humans and doesn't in some sense want humans in it, and so make it easy to achieve anything. And it just seems to me that in a funny way, the miracle of this building having happened almost speaks to what humans can do in the face of this awe-inspiring reality. I mean, it's so small compared to the vastness around it, and yet it just seems to suggest that maybe we're not so bad after all.
Yeah.
all the ruin that we've created on the planet. So it just, I feel like it's one of the most relevant buildings that can possibly have been conceived and completed in this century. So
wow,
congratulations.
Thank
We
you.
are sort of out of time, but I do want to ask one question that sort of a theme that's come up in the Q&A, which is just about materials. So we've had questions about the glass and the bricks and the thatching that you've used. And I guess rather than asking you about specific materials and the specific projects, can I just ask you to close out the conversation by talking about materiality itself, and the relationship to materials is, how you select them, your knowledge base, how your team works with them?
Well, materiality, I think, is a personal interest of mine. I think it's the way that materiality, in connection with space, can suddenly change the whole reality. Is something that's always been interesting me a lot. So also when we work with really inexpensive, low budget buildings, we did a lot of research into, how can you work with these unprecious materials and make them precious, make them expressive, make them in a way inform a space, and I think that so we have a large material as a library here. We kind of always try to dig deeper down into the possibilities in materials. So I think materials are one thing. It's not about the surface so much. It's also about the possibilities and the strength and the knowledge within a material is extremely interesting, I think, and part of the way we work with it is to always be with the thatched building, for example. I mean, everybody knew how to do a thatched roof, but how to do a thatched overhang and a thatched facade was not really something that anybody knew about. But we worked really closely with the thatchers, which is a kind of a very small community of Denmark, and really also pushing their borders and working very very close with them and their knowledge. We worked in one-to-one and so forth, and I think that's an extremely interesting part of digging down into a new material is to really understand. Also, you have to guarantee your client that this is going to work in 50 years as well. So I think with materiality, the most important thing is not to be superficial, but to really understand that there's a whole depth here that you need to know before you can start using it.
Yeah, well said. and it's a great note to end on, because the materiality, for example, the thatching is the meeting place between the community that brings the building about, the history of skill, the history of the site, and the earth that we all inhabit. So it's just marvelous to see how you're bringing all those energies together in these projects. So Dorte, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was absolutely inspiring.
Thank you very much for listening. And I hope you have a great day.
Yeah, you too. And I'll just close by mentioning that we do, of course, have another interview coming up next week, which will be my co-host Stephen Burks speaking to the artist Amanda Williams. That will be a pre-recorded conversation in that case, but please tune in for that. And thanks again, Dorte, and best of luck with the opening of this project and everything else you have.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.